Have you ever said something to your kid and immediately wished you could take it back? Not a scream, not a slap, just a sentence. 5 words, maybe 6. Sit in the car, or over dinner, or in that raw 30 seconds after they broke something you loved. You moved on 10 minutes later. Your child did not. Here are 8 phrases that sound completely normal, that you have almost certainly heard, maybe even said this week, and are quietly rewiring how your child sees themselves. This isn't a list of obviously abusive lines. Anyone can spot those. This is worse. These are the phrases loving, exhausted, well-meaning parents say every single day in ordinary homes with the television on in the background. You probably said at least 3 of them this month. Your parents said them to you, and their parents said them before that. And the reason they keep getting repeated generation after generation is exactly what makes them dangerous. They don't feel toxic in the moment. They feel like discipline, like honesty, like love with an edge. Psychologist Diana Baumrind spent decades studying how different parenting styles shape children, comparing homes built on warmth with homes built on control. One of her clearest findings was this: it isn't the rules that damage kids. Rules, even strict ones, a child can survive. What child struggles to survive is contempt. And contempt is exactly what hides inside these next 8 phrases, dressed up as something else, something reasonable, something you'd defend if a stranger challenged you on it. Here's what makes this list different from the usual parenting shame content flooding your feed. This isn't about blame. It's about pattern recognition. Once you can see the mechanism behind a phrase, you stop needing willpower to avoid it. You just start hearing it coming half a second before it leaves your mouth, and that half second is where everything changes. Number 1, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. This one feels gentler than yelling. It isn't. Anger passes quickly, the way weather passes. Disappointment lingers quietly in the room for days. Anger says you did something wrong. Disappointment says you're something wrong. Psychologist Carl Rogers built an entire framework around this distinction, what he called conditions of worth, the slow realization a child develops that love is conditional on performance, on being good enough, calm enough, impressive enough. Say this phrase enough times across enough years, and your child stops asking, "What did I do?" They start asking quietly to themselves, "What am I?" Number 2, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Read that sentence again, slowly. It threatens pain in direct response to pain. Your child is already flooded, already overwhelmed, already dysregulated, and a message they receive is that the feeling itself is the crime, not the behavior attached to it. Psychologist John Gottman, known for his decades of research into emotional communication inside families, described a style he called emotion dismissing, where a parent's reflex is to shut a feeling down rather than name it. Children raised on that reflex don't actually learn to calm down faster. What they learn is to hide faster. And hiding an emotion is not the same thing as processing one. It just moves somewhere you can no longer see it, usually straight into the body, as a stomachache, a sleep problem, a habit of chewing their nails down to nothing. Number 3, you're too sensitive. This phrase doesn't correct behavior. It edits identity. Say it enough times across enough birthdays, and a child stops trusting their own nervous system. They learn methodically to distrust the exact internal signal that would one day warn them they're standing in an unsafe relationship, an unsafe job, an unsafe room full of people who don't have their best interest at heart. You think you're toughening them up. You're actually disconnecting the alarm. Number 4, why can't you be more like your sister? Comparison feels like motivation to the parent saying it. It is not motivation to the child hearing it. It's a direct hit to something researcher Carol Dweck spent her career mapping in children, how a young mind builds its sense of ability, of worth, of whether effort is even worth trying. Comparison doesn't teach a child to work harder. It teaches them there exists a version of them that would finally be enough, and it just so happens that version isn't the one currently standing in the room. Number 5, I sacrificed everything for you. This one is almost always said with real love behind it, in a moment of genuine exhaustion. That's precisely what makes it so effective and so corrosive over time. A child cannot actually process the abstract concept of parental sacrifice. What they can process instead is debt. Say this line enough times through childhood, and you don't raise a grateful child. You raise a child who spends the next 20 years quietly trying to earn a childhood they already had, and never quite feels like they've paid it off. Number 6, because I said so. Small phrase, enormous long-term consequence. It ends the conversation efficiently in the moment, but it also ends something else. A child's sense that their reasoning, their questions, their small logical mind actually matters to you. Say it once. That's ordinary parenting under pressure. Make it your default answer, and you are quietly training a developing brain to stop asking why anything happens. And a child who learns to stop asking why at home becomes an adolescent, and later an adult who is less equipped to ask why anywhere else, including in the exact rooms where asking why might have protected them. Number 7, you always or you never. Always, never. Two of the most absolute words available in the entire language, aimed directly at a person whose sense of self is still under active construction. A single bad Tuesday afternoon becomes, in their mind, a permanent character trait. Say you never listen enough times, and a child stops hearing feedback about one specific moment. They start hearing a verdict, a life sentence, about who they fundamentally are. Number 8, don't tell your father. This stays between us. This is the quietest phrase on the list, and arguably the most dangerous one to say casually. It sounds like closeness, like a private joke, like being let in. It is actually the earliest blueprint for secrecy between a parent and a child, the exact architecture that, in far darker contexts, predatory adults are known to exploit deliberately. Family therapists have flagged this pattern for years. Even in completely innocent situations, buying an extra ice cream, skipping a chore, a small harmless bend of the rules, teaching a child that secrets are the currency of closeness quietly erodes the one thing supposed to keep them safe, full transparency with the other adults raising them alongside you. A child who has learned that secrecy equals love is a child who will not immediately recognize danger when a stranger, or worse, a trusted adult, uses the exact same sentence for a very different reason. Here's the part of this that should make you genuinely uncomfortable. None of these 8 lines came from cruelty. They came from exhaustion. They came from parents who were themselves raised on the exact same unspoken script, repeating patterns they never consciously chose, never examined, never had the language to interrupt. Psychologist John Bowlby, widely considered the father of attachment theory, argued that children construct their entire internal model of relationships, of what love looks like, of what safety sounds like, from these small, repeated moments. Not the one dramatic blow-up you still remember. The 1,000 tiny ones nobody thought to write down. Now here's the mirror moment, the part where this stops being about your child and starts being about you. Every single one of these 8 phrases is still living somewhere in your own head right now, as an adult. The friend who apologizes for crying in front of you. The coworker who says, "Sorry, I know I'm being too sensitive," before raising a completely valid concern. The version of you that still, 30 years later, braces slightly whenever someone you love goes quiet, because quiet in your childhood used to mean disappointment was coming. None of that is a coincidence. Psychologist Mary Ainsworth, whose research on attachment shaped decades of the field, showed that the emotional rules a child absorbs at home don't stay in childhood. They become the operating system for every close relationship that comes after: the marriage, the friendship, the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake at 35. You're not just raising a child right now, or remembering being one. You are, in either case, still running the program. And here's the twist most parenting content quietly leaves out. The goal was never to become a parent who never says the wrong thing. That parent does not exist anywhere on earth. The actual goal is repair. Research on secure attachment consistently shows that what predicts a child's long-term emotional health isn't the absence of parental mistakes. It's what happens in the 90 seconds directly after the mistake. A parent who stops and says, "That came out wrong. Let me try that again," is doing more repair work in a single sentence than 10 quiet years of never once raising their voice. Think about your own childhood for a second. You can probably still recite, word for word, one sentence a parent or a teacher said to you decades ago. Not the praise, the sting. That's not a coincidence, and it isn't a weakness in you. Your brain is built to encode threat-coded language far more permanently than neutral, forgettable language. Because for most of human history, the words that could hurt you are also the words most worth remembering. Your child's brain is doing that exact same thing to your words right now, today, in this ordinary, unremarkable week. So before you say any of these 8 phrases again, and you probably will because you're human and tired and doing your genuine best with the tools you were handed, just notice the small gap. The gap between what you meant and what actually landed. You're not trying to raise a child who never hears a hard word from you. That's not realistic, and it isn't even healthy. Children who never hear a hard word grow up with no tolerance for friction at all. You're trying to raise a child who knows, underneath every hard word, that the love underneath it never actually moved. That's the whole target. Not perfection, not silence. Just a floor that never disappears, no matter how bad the Tuesday was. Have you ever said something to your kid and immediately wished you could take it back? You will